In this lecture, I'm going to focus on the political context in Russia and how it related to contemporary modern art movements that were happening there. So, the politics of this period are fraught. Russia is one of the allies in the First World War, which means they're allied with Serbia, France, and Great Britain. But they leave the war in 1917 because there is a revolution. So Tsar Nicholas II Romanov, whose family had been ruling Russia for 300 years, was forced to abdicate in February of 1917. Members of the parliament set up a provisional government, but they were opposed by groups of workers known as Soviets. One of the subgroups of the Soviets, the Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, takes over in October of 1917 in what's called the October Revolution. What follows is a civil war between 1918 and 1922. Lenin declares a communist society, which leads to this war between the communists, who are the Reds, and the anti-communists, the Whites. So we see war propaganda here as well, and when you look at this Dmitry Moore poster, "Have you enrolled as a volunteer?" is what the Russian says. It should remind you of Alfred Leet. So this is, exactly the same as our Lord Kitchener poster that we looked at a few weeks ago. And so you can see that the Russians are trying to use that emotional appeal that we saw in the Ally war posters. However, there is also a strong tradition of avant-garde art in Russia that we will see in other posters from this period. In the years before World War I, Moscow had a thriving avant-garde art scene filled with artists influenced by Parisian modernism. So Cubism was very important to them in the years before World War I. However, there's this desire to create a uniquely Russian modernism. And so this should remind you of the nationalism that was so prevalent across the continent during these years. So the answer to this desire for a uniquely Russian modernism was Kazimir Malevich's suprematism. So suprematism is all abstraction, but there's a belief that it can convey powerful emotions. Malevich called it the supremacy of pure feeling in creative art. And there's elements here that really anticipate all of the universal Neoplatonic forms that happen after the war. So this is Malevich's suprematist composition, Plane Flying, from 1914 and 15. And this is supposed to evoke the emotions of a plane taking off. So you can see here is perhaps the propeller, and then it's aiming upwards as if it's lifting off the ground. He doesn't use any recognizable forms. He wants it to be all abstract because he believes that these forms will communicate more completely than any other type of art that had been produced in Europe in the past. So these ideas are compelling during the communist period because they represent such a strong break with what came before. So for example, we're looking here at another war poster from 1919 by Boris Zvorkin. This is the struggle of the Red Knight with the Dark Force. So here, the Red Knight is this guy. He's a worker, you can tell because of his apron, and he's got the crossed sickle and hammer, and he's using a hammer to defeat his enemies, which include this white knight down here who's meant to represent the elite bourgeois tradition. Now this uses all sorts of imagery that would be very recognizable within European art. In contrast, we have this poster by L. Lisitsky. L. Lisitsky followed Malevich and really embraced suprematist styles. And here, instead of recognizable figural imagery, we have "beat the whites with the red wedge." So, and that's also what the words say in Russian. Here we have a red wedge, and it's piercing a white circle. And so this was meant to communicate universally that regardless of whether you read, you could understand that this was meant to inspire you to beat the whites. Whether it does actually communicate universally, I think, is a matter of debate. And it's this problematic association of abstraction also with bourgeois culture that becomes the key issue within Russian constructivism, which is the movement that follows this one. And that's the next lecture that I want you to watch.